Welcome to our exploration of developmental psychology, the scientific study of how people change and grow from conception to death. This field examines not only how we develop physically, but also how our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors evolve throughout the entire lifespan. The phrase from womb to tomb beautifully captures this idea, reminding us that development doesn't stop with childhood. Even as adults and elders, we continue to adapt, learn, and reshape who we are biologically, cognitively, and socially. Developmental psychology is not simply about observing how people grow. It's about understanding why these changes occur and how various forces interact to produce them. We investigate the relationship between biological influences like genetics or hormones, individual characteristics such as temperament or motivation, and environmental factors including culture, family, and education. Ultimately, developmental psychologists aim not just to describe what happens, but to use that knowledge to improve lives by designing better learning environments, early interventions, and support systems that enhance well being across all stages of life. To truly understand development, we divide it into three interconnected domains: physical, cognitive, and psychosocial. The physical domain deals with bodily and brain changes, growth, motor skills, and health. The cognitive domain involves our mental processes, how we learn, remember, solve problems, and use language. And the psychosocial domain focuses on our emotional life, personality, and relationships. But remember, these domains constantly interact. For example, when a baby learns to walk, a physical milestone, it opens up a new world of exploration that boosts cognitive learning and encourages social interaction with parents and peers. Development, therefore, is never isolated. It's a beautifully woven system of changes influencing one another. The modern lifespan perspective views human development as a dynamic, lifelong journey. First, it is lifelong. Growth and change continue from birth to death, with each phase bringing new challenges and capacities. Second, it's multidimensional. We must consider physical, emotional, social, and cognitive aspects together. Third, it's multidirectional. Development involves both gains and losses. A young adult may gain physical strength but lose flexibility, while an old adult may lose speed but gain wisdom and problem solving ability. Fourth, it's plastic, meaning people can change. Through experience, therapy, education, or resilience, we can reshape behaviors and even brain structures. Finally, development is contextual and multidisciplinary, shaped by culture, history, and multiple fields such as biology, sociology, and education. This understanding helps us see human life not as a straight line but as a complex adaptive system. In developmental psychology, three foundational debates help us frame how we understand human growth. The first is nature versus nurture. The question of whether our traits are primarily shaped by genetic inheritance or by environmental experience. While early thinkers like Plato emphasized innate knowledge and John Locke argued for the mind as a blank slate, today's consensus is interactionist. Genes provide potential, but environment determines how that potential unfolds. For example, puberty's onset is biologically programmed, yet its timing depends on nutrition, stress, and cultural context. The second debate in developmental psychology is continuity versus discontinuity. It asks whether development happens in small, steady steps or in sudden, noticeable stages. For example, a child's vocabulary often grows little by little over time. But sometimes there's a sudden jump, a vocabulary spurt, where the child learns many new words quickly. Piaget called these sudden shifts qualitative changes. So development can be both gradual and stage-like. The third major debate is stability versus change. It looks at whether the traits we show early in life stay with us or change as we grow. Research today shows that while some parts of our personality remain stable, humans have great plasticity, meaning we can learn, adapt, and change throughout life. These three debates remind us that development is not fixed or the same for everyone. It's dynamic and deeply shaped by our experiences and context. Evolutionary theories link human development to the long story of biological evolution. Charles Darwin's idea of natural selection explains that traits helping us survive and reproduce are passed on to future generations. Evolutionary developmental psychologists believe that even our emotions and social behaviors, like caring for children or fearing danger, evolved because they increased our chances of survival. In this way, our development reflects both biology and history working together. Some of our earliest behaviors come from evolution. For example, infant reflexes like rooting and grasping help babies find food and stay safe. Humans are also born immature. This long period of dependency allows parents to care for their children and gives time for social and cognitive learning. Konrad Lorenz's famous experiment with goslings showed this process clearly. The young birds followed the first moving thing they saw, even Lorenz himself, showing how attachment can be biologically programmed. These patterns remind us that many human behaviors are deeply rooted in our evolutionary history. Psychodynamic theories focus on how our subconscious thoughts, early experiences, and internal conflicts shape our identities. Sigmund Freud described the human mind as having three components. First is the id, which is impulsive and desires immediate pleasure. Second is the ego, which is realistic and attempts to satisfy needs in practical ways. Third is the superego, which serves as our moral compass, guiding us on right and wrong. These three paths constantly interact and influence our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Freud believed that our early childhood experiences play a significant role in shaping who we become as adults. He proposed that unresolved inner conflicts during the psychosexual stages could lead to anxiety or other issues later in life. In his case study of Little Hans, a young boy's fear of horses revealed deeper unconscious feelings, which Freud referred to as the Oedipus complex. Building on Freud's work, Erik Erikson introduced a social dimension to development. He suggested that development continues through 8 psychosocial stages, each characterized by a key conflict. For example, in infancy, resolving the issue of trust versus mistrust helps form the virtue of hope, while in middle adulthood, the conflict of generativity versus stagnation leads to the virtue of care. Erik Erikson demonstrated that growth and identity evolve throughout our lives, not just during childhood. Behavioral theories change psychology by focusing on observable actions, behavior. John B. Watson and B. F. Skinner believed that people are born as blank slates and that our surroundings shape who we become. In Watson's famous Little Albert experiment, a baby learned to fear a white rat because it was repeatedly bared with a loud noise. This showed that we can condition emotions. Skinner later explained operant conditioning, which means that behaviors that get rewards are repeated, while behaviors that get punished are reduced. For example, when a teacher gives stars for good work, it encourages the child to keep trying. These ideas showed that learning isn't mysterious, it happens through experience and reinforcement. Albert Bandura believed that we don't just learn by doing, we also learn by watching others. In his famous Bobo doll experiment, he showed that children copy what they see. He also said that our confidence, called self-efficacy, and our surroundings work together to shape how we behave. So learning is not just about actions, but also about thinking and observing. Cognitive theories examine how our mental processes evolve. Jean Piaget proposed that children actively construct knowledge through interaction with their environment. He described 4 stages: sensory motor, learning through senses and actions, developing object permanence; pre-operational, symbolic thought, but limited by egocentrism; concrete operational, logical thinking about tangible events; and formal operational, abstract and hypothetical reasoning. Piaget explained change through assimilation, fitting new information into old schemas, and accommodation, altering schemas to fit new information. Lev Vygotsky emphasized the importance of social interaction in the learning process. According to his theories, children are able to achieve higher levels of understanding and skills when they receive support from teachers, parents, or peers. This support operates within a framework known as the Zone of Proximal Development (ZPD), which represents the gap between what a child can accomplish independently and what they can achieve with guidance. The support provided during this process is referred to as scaffolding. Additionally, Vygotsky highlighted the significant role of language in learning, noting that it serves as a bridge between our thoughts, cultural understanding, and educational experiences. Yuri Bronfenbrenner's ecological systems theory provides a powerful model for understanding how multiple environments interact to influence development. At the center is the individual, surrounded by 5 nested systems: microsystem, immediate settings, family, school, peers; mesosystem, connections between these microsystems, for example, parent-teacher relationships; exosystem, indirect environments like a parent's workplace or government policy; macrosystem, the overarching culture, values, and social norms; chronosystem, the dimension of time, historical changes or life transitions such as the digital revolution or divorce. Bronfenbrenner later expanded this to the bioecological model, emphasizing proximal processes, the ongoing interactions between individuals and their environments, as the real engines of development. To understand how people change, developmental psychologists use different research methods. They observe behavior, sometimes in real life, called naturalistic observation, and sometimes in a lab, called controlled observation. Case studies look deeply at one person or situation, like Freud's study of Little Hans. Correlational studies show how 2 things are related, like exercise and memory, but they don't prove one causes the other. In experimental research, scientists change one thing to see how it affects another, helping them find cause and effect. When experiments aren't possible, quasi-experiments compare existing groups, such as different classrooms or age groups. Research in development must separate the effects of age, time, and generation. When studying development, researchers need to tell apart the effects of age, time, and generation. Cross-sectional studies compare people of different ages at one time, like testing 20, 40, and 60-year-olds on memory. These are quick but may be affected by cohort effects, differences caused by when someone was born, not their age. Longitudinal studies follow the same people for years to see how they change, but these take a long time and people may drop out. To get the best of both, researchers use sequential designs, a mix of both methods. This helps scientists see how age, history, and generation all shape development. For example, the Flynn effect shows that IQ scores have been rising across generations because of social and educational improvements. The strength of modern developmental psychology lies in integration. No single theory explains the entire complexity of human growth. Evolutionary and psychodynamic perspectives emphasize nature, the biological and emotional roots of development. Behavioral and cognitive theories explain how learning and change occur through environment and experience. Finally, Bronfenbrenner's ecological model integrates both, showing that broader cultural and social contexts shape how these processes unfold. By weaving these frameworks together, we see development not as linear or predetermined, but as the result of a continuous dialogue
between biology, experience, and context.
The ideas of developmental psychology are used in many areas of life. Teachers use Vygotsky scaffolding to plan lessons that give just the right amount of help, matching each learner's zone of proximal development. Parents and caregivers follow Erickson's stages to build trust, independence, and a strong sense of identity in children. Therapists use Bandura's idea of self-efficacy to help people believe in their ability to change and succeed. Policymakers apply Bronfenbrenner's ecological model when creating programs and spaces that support children and families. All of these remind us of one key truth: plasticity. Human beings can learn, adapt, and grow at any age of stage of life. As we come to the end, remember, development isn't just a straight path from birth to death. It's a continuous dance between our biology, our choices, and our environment. Each theory we've learned, from Darwin to Vygotsky, shows a different piece of the same big picture. Together, they remind us that change is natural, but also something we can influence. So think about yourself. Do you feel more shaped by your inner drive, your relationships, or the world around you? The true beauty of developmental psychology is knowing that all three work together to make us who we are. This presentation draws upon the foundational works of the world's most influential developmental psychologists, from Freud's earliest explorations of childhood conflict to Bronfenbrenner's ecological synthesis of human life. As scholars, it is vital that we see beyond isolated theories and appreciate how each contributes to a larger, dynamic understanding of human potential. Remember, development is not destiny, it's a lifelong opportunity for growth, adaptation, and transformation.